Okay, in this tutorial we're going to look at just animating the bouncing ball. So we're going to look at the position, we're going to look at timing and spacing, and we'll also talk about a bit of or a simple approach to achieving squash and stretch. So what I'm going to do is just create a ball. Let's go into the scale tool. I'll just put this in shaded. And let's just drag this out roughly into the right position. Just going to move this over. What I'm going to do with this in this position on the ground, I'm just going to go in to modify and freeze transformations. This is just going to zero out all of the translate information, the rotate information, the scale information at its default of 1, just stored. So if we move this around and we ever want to get back to that initial position, what we can do, just go in here and zero things out. And we can do the same with the rotation as well. So I'm just going to finally just lift this up into the air. I'm going to have the ball bouncing down and then bouncing out. Okay, and we're ready to go. I will first just create a plane on this, just as a ground plane, more as a reference. And let's just go into this polyplane. I'm just going to set these subdivisions to 0, just so it's easier to see. And let's go in. Okay. Let's just check a few things. I'm going to go into the animation preferences. Just in the time slider, we need to be on playback speed real time, 24 frames a second. Everything else okay. And then we're ready to start. So I'm going to set this first initial keyframe, the ball in this position. And there's a couple of ways to do that. We can press S on the keyboard, and that's going to set a key for everything. If you don't want to set keyframes for absolutely everything in the scene, what we can also do is go in and choose the things we do want keyframes in. So say we wanted all of these but not on the visibility, I can just highlight those, or highlight any of these. I'm just dragging this down. Or we can select multiple fields with Control pressed. So I'll just highlight all of these for now. Right click, and we're going to do a key selected. So this is on the first frame. Okay. I'm going to move forward in time, so around 8 frames, 8 to 10 frames. It's not bad for ball bouncing from around this height. And let's grab our ball. Let's grab the move tool. Let's first of all translate this down. So I'm just going to go into this translate Y and reset this. And then I'm going to move this forward as well. Okay. Let's just grab these frames again. Right click. Key selector, not frame, sorry, properties. Okay, so there we've got our ball bouncing. I may take this initial height up a bit, and what I'm actually going to do is go down here and click my auto key on, and that's going to store anything I do now. If you're unsure about using this, you leave it off. Just make sure to set your keys every time you change the position, rotation, scale of the ball. Bounce down, and then I'm going to take this up to frame 16. I'm going to take this up and move this across. So because I had auto key on, it's actually stored that information. Okay. Move this a little further forward. And if I want to actually match this height, say we're going to loop this animation round, what I can do is actually grab this value here. Often I'll round these off, so let's round this off to -28. Okay. Oh, sorry, the translate Y. Let's round this off to 50. And then on frame 16, set that 15 as well. Set the position of the middle frame just back a little bit, just to get roughly between these positions. And we'll be able to see this more when we look at the graph editor. Okay. So let's just look at this animation now. I'll set my end frame to frame 16. So we're just looking at these frames. And if we just play this back, this is the result we get. At this point, it's just worth noting the play blast function. If you want to see an animation, because in the viewport sometimes this isn't real time, it's trying to play it back real time, but if you have a more complex animation, it may not be playing back at 24 frames a second. So you won't be able to judge how the animation is working properly. So a way around this, rather than having to go out and render the animation, is to just do a play blast. So what we can do is right click over the timeline, and we can go into the play blast. I'm just going to go into the settings. Okay, everything I'm going to leave as is. We can change the quality if we want to. We can display the size from the window settings, from the render settings, and leave that as it is. This is a relative scale of it, so this is going to be 50% of the whatever the render settings are, the window settings. And we don't necessarily need to save this to file. We can do, if you want to save all these different play blasts, we can click on save to file, and we can browse, set a location, and then when we do the play blast, it's going to save that out. Okay, so let's just do a quick play blast of this. It's a very quick process, much quicker than rendering. Okay. And that's just hidden behind. Okay. So again, here is a very mechanical looking object. The timing's okay. You know, overall that's not too bad. But the spacing between this is very linear. It's just kind of going down. It's got a bit of an easing in and out as well, which is going to be an unnatural movement on this. So let's go ahead and fix it. What I'm going to do is go into the graph editor, and I'm just going to click on the translate Y, just the up and down position at the minute. We'll deal with the other things in a second, but let's just grab this first of all. So we'll get this, and what we need to do, so let's just look at the curve. Let's just press F, focus on this. So what we're looking for here is we're looking for the ball to start off slow, and then as momentum, gravity pushes down, it gets faster and faster until it hits the ground. From the ground, we don't want any deceleration in this. We want it to straight away come back up quite fast. It's absorbing the energy and pushing that upwards. And then as the ball loses momentum and gravity starts pushing against it, it starts getting slower again. Okay. So what we're looking for is kind of an M shape on this. So the problem lies with this keyframe down here. This has actually got easing in, so it's got some deceleration into this, and slight acceleration out, so it starts to slow and then gets faster out of this. We don't want that, we want an abrupt change. So we can go in and play with the handles on this, but the problem is that if I move one handle point, it actually moves the other point down. What's happening here is that this is actually, if we think this is the, in terms of value, this is the ground plane here, this is actually pushing the ball underneath the ground before it's coming back up again. So just to show that, you see as it goes from frame 8 where it hits the ground, frame 9 is going into the ground, it's interpenetrating, and then it's coming out. So that's problematic. So let's just grab this, let's just pull this back. So what we need to do is actually break the connection between these two handles, the handle coming into the keyframe and the handle going out of the keyframe. So we can do this by selecting that keyframe and just clicking on this break tangents. What this allows us to do now is independently move these two handles. And that's what we're looking at getting. We're looking at getting this slow out and then getting faster. When we hit the ground, we need to change this direction quickly. So we're going out here quite fast and then gradually easing out of this at the peak of the ball's bounce. Okay. Let's just play this back. You see the movement's much better, much more natural. It's got this arc in it now as it comes down. It's not just going in a linear path. Okay. So again, we can have a quick play blast of this. Right click. Let's just do a play blast. Much better, much more natural. Okay, so we've got our timing, we've got our spacing. Let's now deal with the squash and stretch of this. So what I wanted to do is when it gets to frame 8, we want this to squash down, we want this to have some impact. And it's sometimes worth doing even with quite a solid object, just to exaggerate the fact that there's an impact there. So I'm going to get this. We've got scale key set on frame 1. At this frame, I'm just going to go into this and I'm going to scale this down. So let's just use the scale tool. I'm going to scale this down on this axis. And just because we need to retain the volume of this, because this is squashed down, that volume has to go somewhere. So it's going to go out on the other two axes. I'm just going to go into my channel box here and just look at this. So our scale X and Y should be pretty much the same. So let's set those to about 1.2. Okay. I'm going to set my scale Y to 0.8. So I'm bringing it down by 2 on the Y, I'm taking it up by 2 on both the others, just to retain that volume. Another thing we need to do on this is also go back to the move tool, and because we scaled this down and because it's scaling down from the center pivot point, we just need to move this down. Okay. So one of the problems we're getting straight away with this, we're not going back up from our scale, so we need to get to the back to the standard scale by frame 16. We need to get back to its original shape. So let's just fix this first of all. I'm going to grab these three and set these to 1. And they should be 1 at the start frame. So let's just play blast this. So what's happening with this is the deformation, the squash, is actually starting to keyframe from frame 1. It's starting to interpolate between that. We don't actually want anything to happen to the squash until it actually hits the ground. So let's go and fix this. So frame 8, it hits the ground, we've got the squash. Frame 7, we actually need this to at least be its normal shape. So let's do that first of all. Let's just go into this, and on frame 7, so the key immediately before the impact, there we go. So it comes down now and only squashes when it hits the ground, and then starts coming up. If we want it to get back to its normal volume earlier, before it gets up into the air, we can actually go in here and maybe around 12. again, let's just go in here and set 1 as a key. So it's getting back to its normal volume much earlier. So again, let's just play past this. Okay, much better. We only get the deformation when it's hitting the ground. Let's close that. What we can actually do with this is exaggerate it a little bit as well. So when it's coming in to frame 7, what I'm going to do on that is actually give it a bit of stretch. And this is going to do two things. Let's just go into the scale tool. And let's just stretch this out in our channel box. So let's do this to maybe 1.2. And I'm going to set the X and Y, just control click on these, to 0.8. So again, this time I'm scaling up or stretching it on the Y, so I'm bringing down the amount on the X and Z by the same amount, 0.2, just to keep that volume. So this is going to do two things. One thing it's going to provide is almost like a bit of anticipation. If you imagine this ball to be a full character, if the character was coming down to land, they'd probably stretch a leg out, they'd extend a leg ready to hit the ground. So this is kind of giving us this effect. It's also giving us a better contrast between the squash pose. So what it's doing is exaggerating this squash even more, because we're going from more of an extreme. So we're going from a stretch pose to a squash pose. So it gives a really nice impact and really nice contrast between those two. Okay. One of the things we've got with this really, or the problem with this, is the direction of this. I would expect this to be at an angle. So that's the next thing we'll look at. So let's go into the rotation tool. Still got my auto key on, but remember you can still key here if you want. I'm just going to rotate this so it's already at an angle, as if it's coming down. It's already been rotating. So I'm going to take this and I'll rotate Z. I'm going to take this to 45. Now what we want at this point is it to be at 0, which it is, and in fact maybe at this point got a rotation of around 2.5. I might just actually rotate that back a little bit more as well. Okay. I'm going to loop this, so what I'm actually going to do is go on to the end frame, frame 16. I'm going to go onto this rotate Z, and let's just set this to 45 as well. And that way the beginning frame and the end frame are exactly the same. Okay. Again, we can do a quick play blast of this. And we've got much more character in this, just by adding the squash and stretch, just by adding a bit of rotation in there. So give yourself a good basis with the timing, get the spacing right for it, and then you can go in and start adding a bit more character into this. Use things like squash and stretch for anticipation, for a changing kind of in posture, for gesturing, lots of different things. So finally, let's look at how we can actually create a loop of this. So I've got the ball. Let's go back into our graph editor here. Press F, just focusing on all of this. In fact, let's select all of these and press F. What I can do is grab these. We can go to Edit, Copy. This is going to frame 16, so just make sure I play my playback head to frame 16, and then Edit and Paste. Okay. This is now going to, let's just extend this out. So frame 31, I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to edit, paste on this. maybe one more. Edit, paste. So you can get one set of keyframes around a loop, and you can quickly build up an animation based on this. So now what we have, and in fact if I play blast this, okay, we start to get that looping round. What we can do as well, just add a bit of variation to this. Let's just go to the translate Y here. Let's just focus on this. What we could do with this is actually go in and maybe change just some of the heights of these a little bit. It's a subtle thing, but it does make a difference. If you see it's going to the same height every single time, or you know, the timing is quite regular, we could also change the timing. We could speed it up, slow it down at certain points. Just by being able to do that in the graph editor really easily can help you give a lot more variation in your animation, make it a lot less predictable. So that's the end of this tutorial.